So we're talking about customer management. And the guy in the picture, his name is Fergal Quinn. And we will talk about him a bit later on. He is a retailer and well, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he built up a chain of grocery stores. I mentioned them briefly yesterday here in Ireland, from one to having about 20 grocery stores around Ireland called Super Quinn. So they don't exist as a brand anymore. But he built it up, and when he sold it as a going concern, it was doing very well. And it was a private company, so it didn't become a public limited company the way Tesco's or any of these others are. He existed as a private company and built up a competitive business that he maintained. How he did that, he was a shrewd businessman, but he was also principled and had clear ideas about customers and how to engage with business with them and so on. And a number of the things, the innovations he introduced are in place in stores all around the world. Certainly, he influenced the grocery trade in Ireland a significant amount. I suppose one of the key things that drove his success in many ways was a clarity of understanding who his customer was and what they wanted and how to engage with them. And the other thing about that is that he wasn't afraid to ask, and he certainly wasn't afraid to listen. So these are two crucial components of customer management from my perspective. So what are we about? What we're trying to do is to examine the different ways that organizations deal with their customers. Most organizations will profess to be customer centric, to be interested in their customers, and a lot of them are, but they don't always act that way. And not all businesses are interested in anything more than the bottom line. You can be a profit focused business and be clearly focused on making money. But if profit is your sole motivation, that can manifest itself with sharp pricing and with excessive cost cutting, which undermines your long term viability in reality. In other words, if you pursue profit at all costs, where do you build a relationship with your customers? If everything is about squeezing as much profit from the business as possible today, what does the long term prognosis for the business look like? It may not be as positive as you might think. Examine the ways that organizations deal with their customers is the first thing. Developing skills and practices that support customer retention. So, customer retention is a crucial component of this module, and it's a crucial aspect of customer management in general. And it should be. We should be looking to keep our customers. Occasionally, it can be useful to get rid of a customer if we're deciding we don't want to be in that business anymore, or we don't want that relationship anymore, and that can happen. One of the organizations I'm just with is we've just been fired as a customer. And that sounds really bad. But our accountants and auditors have decided that they don't want to be in the audit business anymore. Now, this is happening to a lot of Irish accountancy bodies. Because of rules and regulations, it's an onerous job. And actually, we're finding difficulty in finding a replacement. So we've had these auditors for 3 or 4 years, and they contacted us and said, look, we're getting out of this business, so we don't want your business anymore. We're going to be doing something else, which is interesting. So now we have to go find a new supplier. That can happen. And this idea of customer retention obviously goes against that. But in particular, in the audit business, it is useful to, from a good governance, good practice point of view, you should be changing your auditors every 5 or 6 years anyway. But we want to talk about the broader idea of customer retention, what skills and practices can help with that. And we want to learn from customer-centered organizations and the benefits of a customer-centered approach. So that's what we're about. Now, we talked about the jewelry business yesterday as being our introduction to this, and I do think it's useful to go back to that now and then, but we won't for the moment. If we want to build competitive advantage in our business, what does that look like? what does competitive advantage look like? Does it look like more sales? Does it look like more profits? Does it look like greater relationship with customers? We need to decide those sort of things. But we can look to the roots of competitive advantage. Where is competitive advantage grounded? Now, according to Michael Porter, there are three generic strategies, but two of which are low costs and differentiation. The third is focused, either low cost or focused differentiation, which is zoning in on a particular marketplace. So if our generic source of competitive advantage is low cost, our approach is all about buying better in terms of cost, keeping costs down, running more efficiently, selling more efficiently, driving costs out of the business so that we widen that profitability window in one sense by reducing the cost side. Because profits are equal to sales minus costs. Sales minus costs is profit. So if we reduce our costs, we increase our profit. If we see that as being our source of competitive advantage or the result of our competitive advantage. The other main one is differentiation, to be different to somebody else, to create a space where our customers want us and cost isn't as important. And ideally, I'd love a customer for whom cost isn't an issue, who really wants to work with me. So low cost or differentiation are the two sort of generic strategies. But how do we get there? In reality, by the way, I think we're probably always going to be looking at some sort of resultant strategy or approach, which will be more than likely based on building differentiation, which is really about branding, building our brand so that we become more recognized and we have more adhesion, more stickiness with our customer. At the same time, we will look at efficiency. We will look to try and build efficiency so we can keep down cost. But how do we do these things? We can do them by looking to improve efficiency, and that's certainly something we should look at, this idea of operations. How do we do what we do better? How do we do what we do more cost effectively? I don't want to say cheaper because that sounds wrong, but how do we leverage savings? How do we achieve greater efficiency by buying, by staffing, by using materials, or using equipment, or changing the design, or changing the process? How can we improve efficiency? Now, the reality is this can be done. You only have to look at some of the best manufacturers in the world, people like Toyota, who have driven this idea of world-class manufacturing, or lean manufacturing, as we call it now, where we try and drive quality improvements all the time. So improving efficiency and improving quality are two sides of this. And what Toyota does is drive that sort of level of efficiency by looking for improvements at all levels and recognizing that little microscopic improvements all add up if you keep doing them. Improving efficiency is better use of resources. Improving quality is less waste, more on point, less errors. So there are two ways that we can build this competitive advantage. We can, of course, also innovate. The more we innovate, the better we're going to be as well. If we innovate, we can innovate process, which gives us better quality and improved efficiency. We can innovate the product so that we're giving customers something closer to what they want, or we're addressing an unmet need. We can innovate our relationship in terms of branding. So we're communicating better and we're building more adhesion with our customer base. So improving innovation is another key route to competitive advantage, as is, of course, improving responsiveness to customers. And these things are related. The more responsive we are to our customers, because we know who they are, we know where they are, we understand what language they speak, we understand how best to communicate with them, we understand what their problems is, what their pains are, and we give them solutions to those things. The better we can do that, the better we can build competitive advantage. Now, that competitive advantage could be rooted in a technological advantage. It could be rooted in a proprietary product or a service that nobody else does, which is fine. But we have to keep innovating and developing and improving on all of these axes to try and make sure we maintain and we continue to build our competitive advantage. Because competitive advantage is a position of strategic strength. It's a position for which it's harder for somebody else to eject us, to push us out of the business. I meant to switch on my video there. So this is what we're aiming to do, and customer management is a key part of this. So if you look at the quote at the bottom, achieving improved responsiveness to customers is a function of both attention to developing and nurturing the customer relationship and relies on influencing quality, efficiency, and innovation in the organization, achieved through holistic and functional strategies and value chain management. It's everything, really. Achieving improved responsiveness to customers is a function of both the attention to developing and nurturing customer relationships and relies on the other things. It's both the aim and the enabler. So this is what we want to achieve a competitive advantage. So it mentions value chain. So we need to think about that for a minute. Improving customer responsiveness means all organizations require customers to acquire or utilize our products or services. In other words, we don't have a business unless the customers are using us, are buying from us and using what we offer, that they're building, that they're engaging with us, that they're building a relationship with us. So to be successful, we have to ensure that whatever we provide is meeting their needs. So whatever product we've designed, whatever service we've designed meets the needs of the customer, that our operations are capable of delivering this product or this service, that we know what the solution is, and we can produce it, and the cost of operations and performance is less than revenues generated. That gives us profit. Now, we do have to look at this in the round and recognize that there might be lost leaders or there might be elements where we have to build up market share, etc. But in the grand scheme of things, our costs have to be less than our revenues. And this all is based on us understanding our customer, who they are and what their needs are, what his or her needs are. I think that means that we need to have a clear marketing orientation. Marketing orientation is not about selling to somebody. It's not about a focus on production. It's about building relationships and solving the customer's needs. All right. So one of the first questions is, what do customers want? Let's look at grocery stores. What do customers want in a grocery store? What do customers want? Food, drink, beauty products, good quality. So they want products across a range of areas. They want quality. It's interesting. Quality. What does that mean? So what does quality mean? Well preserved. So within its sell-by date, how much? You know the way we can define quality? Any other way? I think quality is meeting the expectations of the customer. Now, the expectations might vary. So I might want a cheap solution. That might be quality to me. You might want something that's extremely well preserved. You might want something that looks the part. So quality is in the eye of the customer, really. But I do think it's key to what customers want. They want quality. They want quality as it means to them. That might mean in the groceries in terms of healthy. That might mean healthy foods. It might mean recognized and respected brands. It might mean fit for purpose. So if I buy pasta or noodles that they're good quality, that I can pasta or noodles or rice, we're talking about commodity ingredients that they just need to be real, obviously, and they need to be cookable, don't they? So they have to be fit for purpose. Now, the reality is they generally are. But if you think of other more complex products, maybe they need to be produced in certain ways. So customers want products across a range of these. They want quality. Anything else they want? Reasonable pricing. And for reasonable, you could use words like fair, we could use competitive, we could use low. So they want it at the right price. I think that's valid. Anything else you might say that customers want? What do you want? If you go to the grocery store, what do you hate? What do you not like? If it's me, I don't like queuing. So queuing, lining up. I do not like lining up or lining up slash queuing. Too crowded. I do not like. So these are not quality. So poor quality, we could say poor are what we don't want. Self check in is much better. Self check in, checkouts, check in or check out. Self checking is much better. Better for who? I think so. I think it's also good for the shops too. I think it's great because it's down to me to get my stuff done quickly as possible. It's down to me to be ethical and honest, of course. The shop might decide to check my basket occasionally. And I remember the first two times I did it, I got checked. And my attitude was not good about that. I said, you're offering this mechanism, I'm choosing to use it, and now you've caused me to stop twice to check my basket. I really wasn't happy about that. So how it's introduced is interesting. So it's giving us what we want. So we can understand what we want. If we go on and we talk about, here's from a previous class, produce freshness, convenience is kind of what we talked about. Good service versus low prices. Yeah. Cheap, another potential way of saying low prices, better value. Variety is something we didn't mention. Nor parking or fresh bread. So if we go back to this for a second, we could say, in terms of the experience, we could say, remember, we could tie this in with the too crowded thing, parking or suitable parking if we're having to drive. The fresh bread is nice. So again, if it's a grocery store, maybe we want fresh bread. Maybe now grocery stores do like to reduce it because the smell of fresh bread entices people to buy and to consume obviously. So that can work. Well, when we look at stores, what do stores do in response? If we look at Lidl and Aldi, which is a chain here, they do a lot of things which enables them to do this. This bit here is really important. Enables them to be 30 up to 30% cheaper. Let me just change this to. Oh, they are cheaper than similar offerings from competitors. So they do things like source products locally. There's cross training of staff. Their shelves are different. They're a bit more open. And they require products to be provided in suitable packaging, which makes it easier and quicker to stock the shelves, which brings down the number of staff required, which brings down the overall cost. They do things like have extra barcodes on their products, so they require producers, not only do they require them to send them in and define packaging sizes, etc., they also require them to produce extra barcodes on their products to make it quicker to scan at the checkout. They design their checkouts They're not into the self-service ones yet, but they've designed their checkout so it's all about speed through the checkout, so to try and get people through faster. They also do things like they don't carry as big a range as Tesco's or some other retailers. So they've taken our approach and they said, what we want from our grocery shopping is certain things. We want fairly much the standard staple items. We want to get in and out quickly with decent parking. We don't like queuing. We want better pricing. So what can we do as a business to boost our operations to enable those things, particularly around pricing? So design of product and packaging and operations designed to be more efficient keeps down the staffing, speeds up the process. Having a smaller range of products. So the average Aldi or little store in Ireland will hold about 2 to 3,000 products. And that sounds like a lot. I don't mean units, I mean product types. So coffee, tea, etc. So quite a small version. It sounds like a lot, but when you drill into it, it's interesting. Actually, let me show you something. Let's just run an experiment. So if I go look at Tesco and I type in salt, what is salt? Who knows? Technically, it's sodium chloride. It's a very basic product. So here in Tesco, there's salt. The scary thing is 242 items. Now, not all of those are salt products, granted. Let's say cooking ingredients. And let's see, what else can we do? Cooking ingredients, herbs and spices, salt and pepper. So 17 items right there. Now, let me just see. Can I do the same thing at Aldi? A-L-D-I, Aldi.ie. What am I looking for? Salt. I don't know if this will work. It doesn't produce any answer. Let me try Lidl. I don't know if they do a product search online. Let's put on my store. That's not what I want. These are offers in store. So they don't have a range of products. No, they don't have a list of products that I can see. Grocery range, fish range. That's just foodstuffs. No, they don't have one. But here, as I said, dry pack table salt, sacks of salt, Tesco rock salt grinder, cooking salt, fine organic sea salt, pink Himalayan salt mill, Malden sea salt, fine sea salt, low salt, so diet salt, Himalayan pink salt grinder, sea salt grinder, sacks of coarse sea salt, and so on, right? And there's more to it than just those 17. So if I just take out the cooking ingredients, we said there was 35. Let's see what other ones are in here that may or may not be relevant. More salt grinders, gravy. So then gravy, that's fair enough. Garlic salt, onion salt. It's in those products. I'm not going to count those, but you get the idea. Salt is a basic compound. How can there be so many varieties of salt available on the store shelf? Whereas if I go to Lidl in the supermarket, I know from experience that there might be 3 or 4 versions. There'll be a bag of salt. I can buy salt in a bag. I can buy salt in a grinder, and there might be a smaller size of the same thing. So what that means is Tesco carries a much broader range because they have lots of different variations. Now, if we look at this, in pricing here, you'll see 60 cents a kilogram, 3.20 a kilogram. Dry pack table salt 7.50, sacks of salt 7.50. So the same product, same weight, and we're charging 60 cents for this and 3.20 for a kilogram of this. So this is 5 times the price of that. Cooking salt, which is basically the same thing, 83 cents a gram. Rock salt grinder, €9.90 a kilogram. Pink Himalayan salt, €14.74 a gram, compared to the cheapest version, which is 60 cent. That's a kilogram, compared to the cheapest, which is 60 cent a kilogram. If we go down and we look at sea salt, so a bag or a box of salt, 15.60. So what we see here is a marginal variety on the salt product, but staggeringly different pricing and packaging and presentation. Now, I do get that rock salt or coarsely ground salt gives you a different taste sometimes than sea salt. I do get that there is a difference to a certain extent. But I'm not sure at the 17 to 18 to 20 different products. I don't get it. Do you see my problem? Partly it's that expensive, but what I'm saying with Tesco is that there are so many varieties of the product. So if I go to Tesco as a customer and I present with all of these products, I have more choices to make, which sounds good, but it means I have to process more. If I go to Little, just a couple of things, it's a quick decision, I'm gone. So it goes back to speed and engagement. So I'm not saying that there isn't a customer who wants more choice, but what I'm saying is that Tesco serves a broad range of customers with broad needs. Aldi and Lidl are more discerning. They're saying, okay, we understand most of our customers, they want to get in and they want to get out. They're not that fussy about some of the stuff. So we're going to give them more choices, sorry, less choices. We're going to design our business to be more operationally effective and efficient, etc., and try and get it to move on and see where we get to. So that's what we're looking at. So if I go back to my slides, my point here is that I'm not saying Tesco don't understand their customer. What Tesco were doing is they're trying to serve a lot of customers through one vehicle, whereas Lidl kind of understands that we don't have to be all things to all people. And as a result, they're becoming very good at what they do. Aldi and Lidl, they're two separate businesses, but they operate the same way. Lidl generally tries to follow Aldi. They have grown their business in Ireland, so they really understand their customer. What about this? What does a customer of a Toyota want? If you're looking to buy a car, if you were buying a car, what would you be looking for? It doesn't matter if it's Toyota or something else, by the way. Look at the design of this. What do you think? It looks like a fairly normal car, but what does the design tell you? Complicated? I see that. It is becoming more complicated. Here's my thing. A car, first and foremost, is a form of transport. So what a car does is it allows me to shorten my distances. It's a time machine, if you like, in that it saves me time. It allows me to go from here to there quicker. It allows me to go from here to there drier. It allows me to go from here to there and to bring stuff with me, to transport myself, my baggage, my goods, and to do it across greater distances in shorter times. So that's the basic functionality. But there are more and more cars on the market. The cars makers have responded by adding functionality to try and entice us, and so they can charge more prices or they can sell more cars. So the functionality they're adding is more focused on additional needs or in their interpretation of customers. So if I look at this, what I see is there's three things straight away that sort of show me how the automobile business has changed in the last 30, 40 years. Some of it is driven by technology, yes, but this here is not high tech. These are cup holders, aren't they? So what that recognizes is that customers like to have a drink on their journey. If they're commuting, which is what most of us buy our cars for, they take their coffee with them, or they bring a bottle of water with them. If they're going on a long journey, they have a bottle so they don't have to stop to drink, to stop to get a bottle to drink. So the cup holder is there to make the journey a little bit more comfortable. The big screen thing here, again, my car doesn't have one of these because my car is a bit older. It's 19 years old now. I'm not saying they didn't exist then, it's just it wasn't automatic. It wasn't a standard feature. But what this does is it gives the driver more, it's leveraging technology and it's giving the driver more comfort in some ways. It's allowing to have a better entertainment system. It's allowing them to do directions and mapping and GPS and that sort of stuff. It's allowing for reverse parking cameras and so on. So it's designed to aid the driver in the use of the automobile in what they want it for. Longer journeys, faster traffic, music to listen to, but radio stations to listen to, and safety, not even safety in terms of reversing. It's more about protecting the car from pranging it, from bumping it off something else. It's a functional aid. And actually, on the steering wheel, you see more. On the steering wheel, you see, so, and again, this has become the last 15, 20 years, we see this controls on the steering wheel which control other functions, like this information system, like the entertainment or radio, like the answering phones. The fact that our phones are Bluetooth into the car now. So it gives additional functionality available to the driver so they don't have to take their hands off the wheel, which is notionally a health and safety thing. All right. So what this shows is that what customers are looking for, first off, they're probably looking for a transport solution. Like I said, that might be faster time to work. It might be being able to avoid bad weather when traveling. In other words, not having to be outside. It might be being able to transport weight, books, products, baggage, kids. Of course, that's another one. To transport my people, whether they're big or small. Might be GPS. It might be a more comfortable ride or journey. It might be more entertainment because we are stuck in traffic. It might be safer driving, transport, less risk, less potential to hurt ourselves or others and the car. So there's a number of different things that we might be looking for as customers. And we start off with our basics and then we're adding on. And what the car company is doing is looking from the other side and saying, you know what people want is they want this and they want that. And this is how people live now. And we can give them this solution and that solution. And we can add this to the car. All of those things are relevant. But there's actually something probably much more important. Or a few things which are more important. What about reliability? What about speed or drive ability? In other words, what about looking good in my car? So the Toyota has a car which meets top level of lists here, which in particular meets the reliability function. It doesn't worry as much about looking like a Ferrari, because Ferrari are there to do that. Ferrari can deliver the speed and the drivability and the looking good and the latest technology. And I pay 4 times for a Ferrari what I pay for a good Toyota, 10 times for the smallest Toyota. So, what do customers want is really important when we talk about customer management. Understanding our customer and then understanding which customer we want to go for and how we deliver a solution to that customer. So, Ferrari are delivering a solution to this customer, which is a small group of people, lots of money, who are petrol heads to a certain extent, who certainly are fashionable or want to be fashionable, and who like the high life. At Toyota Avensis, they're targeting different. They're targeting probably people who drive to work and home again, maybe who have families. They're also targeting a customer which is beyond just the individual. They're targeting businesses. So people who drive for a living, who go out and meet customers, like on the road salesmen or engineers. So I have friends who have worked in those sort of jobs. And one of them, I remember having a Toyota Avensis 2-liter diesel, and it was just like bulletproof. It just kept going, and it was fuel efficient, and it was an estate version, so he could bring his tools around. And that was his company car, given to him by his company, because it met the company's needs for their ability to have an engineer on the road. So understanding who our customer is, and not all customers are the same, and that there are different types of customers with different needs, shapes what we do with our business in terms of the products we offer, how we offer them, where we offer them, and how we engage with our customers. And that's the crucial thing to start from. So we need to understand this idea that our business is about adding value. So when we talk about engagement with customers, we have to understand what we call the value chain. So the value chain is the coordinated series or sequence of functional activities necessary to transform inputs and our skills into finished goods and services the customers want. So it's a long, convoluted definition. But let's just look at this here for a second. Do we have an actual value chain? No, I don't want to hand that. We'll come back to it. So a value chain might be IKEA. So, in fact, do you remember we looked at the video for IKEA? Do you remember this? We looked at the video way back where the guy was drawing out and the narrator was talking about IKEA. In that case, they talked about going backwards to the distributor who brought the stuff to IKEA, back to the factory where the furniture and products were made, back to the forests where the wood was grown. So even if you think about it from a car company, the car company, Toyota, buys tires from a tire company. It buys steel from a steel company and fabricates that into the body parts. It buys components from the component company. It buys the wires or the bulbs from a bulb manufacturer. It buys the foam for the seat from a foam manufacturer. It buys the leather on the steering wheel from a leather manufacturer and so on. So when we talk about the foam, so when you sit in the car, it's sort of the foamy cushion in the seat. So that comes, we'll say, from a foam manufacturer. That foam manufacturer is buying in raw ingredients that they use in their business to manufacture the foam. And those raw ingredients are probably some form of plastic and other components, some oil-based components that they buy from somebody else. So they buy it in drums and in packets and so on. The value chain is understanding each of those pieces down behind us, before us, and the pieces in front of us, between us and the end user. So the idea is that at each stage, somebody's adding value. So if I look at this mouse here, you can see me. Sorry. If I look at this mouse, so the mouse has plastic parts. It's got a little, I'm not sure if it's plastic or a rubber wheel. It's got some sort of sensor in there, which is a light sensor. So there's some sort of diode. It's got batteries in it. So the batteries are a component. It's got a little plastic switch. So some of these components are going to come from the same place. They're going to buy the plastic bodies in one piece. They're going to buy the company I buy the mouse from bought the mouse lock, stock, and barrel. Somebody manufactured the mouse. The manufacturer of the mouse bought the components from their suppliers. And their suppliers, for example, the light sensor, probably bought some component that assembled the light sensor from, I bought components from somebody for the back. So at each stage, somebody's adding value. That's the idea of the value chain. So when we talk about the value chain, ultimately what we're saying is that if we understand our customer and what they want, and our customer could be the person next in the value chain to us, they might not be the end consumer. Our customer could be the manufacturing company who takes our products and does something else with it. But our customer, we need to understand our customer and what they want, and then that determines what we do and what we pull from the value chain behind us. In an ideal world, we should understand that end-to-end value chain and where we fit, because then we have a better chance of surviving threats or issues that arise. So that's the idea of the value chain. So once we understand what the value chain is, this middle statement, we need to look at the set of functional level strategies that support our business strategy to strengthen our competitive advantage along this value chain or within this value chain. A functional level strategy is a strategy for the specific functions of the business. So manufacturing, purchasing, HR, etc. So when we need to understand our customer and what they want in the context of what we're going to do and how we meet that need of the customer. A significant part of that customer's need might be the relationship with us. It might be the hand-holding. It might be the engagement by our staff. So customer service, for example, could be a really important part of that customer requirement, in which case we need to invest in customer service. I was doing an example on Netflix recently in another class. Do you guys use Netflix? Have you ever spoken to anybody from Netflix? Because I never have. And I've been a Netflix customer for several years now. Netflix, if you think about it, Netflix has something like for every 29,000 subscribers, it has one employee. So it has obviously millions of subscribers. So it's got a lot of employees. It has designed its business and it's offering to its customers works on the basis that the customer doesn't really need to speak to anybody at Netflix. Right? It's all online. It's using online technologies. And in reality, Netflix's primary activity has to be understanding what customers want and enabling them to access that content. So if you have a problem, which we don't, to be fair, I haven't really had many problems with Netflix using it. But if you had a problem, you go to the help section, and their help section is quite good because there's not that can go wrong. And you really have to get stuck to have to go through to actually contact somebody to make the effort to actually try and contact somebody and reach out to do that. So my point is that they're actually really good at what they do. Netflix understands their customer, it understands what they're looking for. They've designed a very efficient mechanism to deliver what we want that works and doesn't break. And the problem more so is our problems with Netflix more so are if we've got poor Wi-Fi. That's more the issue. That or we haven't paid our bill. Other than that, it just works. So Netflix's operations are pretty good, and they understand that their piece is to enable us to access content. Now, they've realized that actually they can buy into content from other content producers, but they've also realized, given what they're learning about us all the time, by the way the system works, that they're able to shape the development of content and become content producers themselves and use that to grow their activity and their engagement and their offering to the customer. So Netflix is a pretty good example of a company that understands their customer and what the customers want and gives it to them. And they understand how to do that. And they realize that actually customer engagement, customer service, direct customer service isn't a huge component. And the part of that becomes because they were the first into the marketplace and they defined what the business is, as a result, the interface and everything. So it's that idea of understanding our customer, what they want, and coming up with ways to give them what they want in a framework or a package that works. If we go back to the car, we haven't all shifted enough whereby we don't want to speak to somebody before we buy a car. So the car companies in general, historically, certainly, and still today, have relied on dealers as a key interface with customers who are trained about the car, who get to know the customer. The good ones get to know the customer and say, if you know what you want, that's fair enough. If you don't, have you considered this product? Have you considered that product? Or they understand that the developments that they can bring to the car package. Say, you can have this car, we can have it with a sunroof, you can have it with leather, you can have it with this, you can have it. So these are some of the options. And they work with us to try and solve our problem to help get us into a new car. Now, they're trying to sell a car at the end of the day, but they work with the customer. And so part of the marketing gig is getting the customer to come to the dealer, and then it's onto the dealer to try and close the sale. So that's different to Netflix, where we don't speak to anybody. So understanding who our customers are and what they want, that's the first piece. So what we'll do next week is we'll get further into this and we'll start talking about customer management systems, in particular CRM, customer relationship management, as a key point, and how we're starting to use systems to enable us to do this sort of engagement function better. I'll see you next week. All right. Talk later. Bye-bye. See you guys.